Truth Plus Media.
Welcome to Iconic Sonics. I'm your host, Mike Gastineau, and thanks for joining us again for a terrific episode brought to you by Rise Above. Our title sponsor this year, Rise Above, is a non-profit organization that educates Washington's Native youth through sports and especially basketball. You can learn more about their work at nativeyouthriseabove.org. Our show is also brought to you by Epic Seats. Nothing beats Epic Seats. You can get details on the greatest shows and events coming to town at epicseats.com. And Iconic Sonics is always brought to you by Dick's Drive-In Restaurants. Great burgers, real Washington potatoes, hand-dipped shakes, and 8 great Seattle area locations. Our show today features a guy who has been described at various times as Seattle basketball royalty. That might be putting it a little big. I don't know. He's one of Seattle's ultimate gym rats. That one's right on target. He's the all-time assist leader at the University of Washington, and he's the associate head coach for the Washington Husky basketball team. My friend, Will Conroy. Will, good to see you.
Man, it's a pleasure. And I really appreciate even the chance to come on here and talk sports and basketball with you, man. You're the legend.
Oh, I don't know about that. Let's not get carried away. It's funny, when you and I talked for a minute, you brought up the whole, gosh, it's been so long now, 15 years without the Sonics. And it's amazing. We're going to get to that, talk a little bit about what that means within the basketball community, because you're closer to that community than I am. And you have kids who are, getting to an age where they'd be like, how come we don't have an NBA team? And I'm sure it's frustrating as a parent.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct. And I think it's a big missing gap with our youth basketball right now. Obviously the Storm are doing their job, but in that department, big gap.
Big gap indeed. Let's get back to tell me your first memory of Seattle. I think you were born in Portland, if I've got my notes right. How'd you guys end up, when did you guys end up in Seattle?
I moved up here in elementary school. My mother went to Garfield High School, and my whole family is from here. And then her mother moved to Portland. My grandmother moved to Portland when a little bit after high school. So then that's where I was born. And then we moved up here right like third grade, fourth grade, and been up here ever since.
What is it about Garfield High too? The family bonds. Now, I don't know if you moved up here just because mom went to Garfield, but the point being, there's a lot of that down through the years in Garfield history. That school has a special hold on the people who went there, and it goes back 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years, the people who went to Garfield. You're always proud of your school, but there's something about that school. What is it?
It's hard to explain. I can't just sit here and tell you this specific thing is why we love Garfield so much. It's just a feeling when you walk through those hallways. You're proud to be an alumni of there. It's such a family school. It's right in the heart of the city. And there's so much pride and tradition at that school, and you just want to be a part of it.
So how old were you when you first played basketball in a little bit of a competitive situation and maybe started realizing, hey, I'm kind of good at this?
I would say I started football. I was a football guy first. So around 9 or 10, I got more serious about playing basketball. And then, just kind of watching, everybody start gravitating towards basketball. I think Allen Iverson became a really popular figure in the sport. And then, guys around our city like Gary Payton, Jason Terry, Doug Christie. You start to see it a little bit become more popular, and then I start gravitating towards basketball a little more.
And it's no secret, and this is something that gets to the heart of the thing we're missing without an NBA team here. Kids have always looked to athletes, athletes, musicians. But you look to people and look for inspiration. And I'm sure you just mentioned it. There were guys already. You're 9 and 10 years old, and you're already starting to pay attention. So this would have been around the mid 90s, right when the Sonics were going to the NBA Finals. How much of that do you remember?
Oh, I remember a lot of it. I played for my 13th, 14th, at 13 or 14, I played for Gary Payton All-Star team. I actually became a part of that. I call Gary Payton uncle to this day.
No kidding.
I went to all his camps. I went to all the Gary Payton camps. And then what happened was his agent, Eric Goodwin, his nephew David Hudson, we ended up going to school together, and me and David Hudson got really close. And so I would always spend the night with David Hudson at Eric Goodwin's house. And, that was Gary's agent. So we always be around Gary.
And you're picking up, and people might laugh at this, but I think it's true. You're picking up life skills in that situation too, right? As much, if not more than basketball. Your basketball skills are kind of in you, and it's up to the coaches to bring them out. Mm-hmm. But you're hanging around these guys. You're seeing how they conduct business.
Yeah, you're seeing that. You're seeing their professional life. You're seeing them with their family, and you get like it's like, man, I want to do this one day. I want to be like this one day. And when you're around it, it makes it a little bit more feasible for you. Like it doesn't seem like it's a fantasy or a fairy tale when you actually get around it. It's like, actually, really, people can really do this. Like, you don't have to be like 6'9" with a 45-inch vertical. Like, normal folks can make it to the NBA, and it makes it more feasible for you. You feel like you can grasp it.
This city of Seattle has always had great basketball talent, but you came of age as a high school player and a college player during a time that it was ridiculous how much talent there was for a city of this size. This isn't New York City. This isn't Los Angeles. This is Seattle. It's not some tiny town, but list off some of the guys you remember playing against in high school who are still top of the mind with anybody who's a basketball fan here. It's incredible.
Well, can I get a piece of paper? You start Dan Dickow, Luke Rittenauer, big kid at Eastlake, Curtis Borchardt, Douglas Wren, Jamal Crawford, Brandon Roy, Martell Webster, Marvin Williams, Marcus Williams, Terrence Williams, Roderick Stewart, Nate Robinson, Trey Simmons. The list goes on and on and on, as far as good players who, gave themselves a chance to, make top dollar at the highest level of basketball. And that's kind of what you want to do.
What were the high school games were incredible. I'm sure the AAU games were incredible. It always felt to me, and I don't know, you can explain it better, that the competition, for lack of a better word, it was fierce, but it was friendly. There always felt like there was respect among you guys, that you never heard of, there's bad blood between this guy, and you better watch out if they're playing. What brought that on, do you think? Why within the Seattle community was there so much respect between the players of the same age?
Because it was always us versus everybody. And we made sure that, some of the leaders of that younger group, we made sure that the younger guys watched how we operated, and we didn't operate with a jealousy or a hatred for the next guy. We supported them, and they were part of the family. And we wanted to make sure that the group underneath us saw that, so they can follow the same footsteps. And even when we go out of town, even when I would play pro ball, often in a different state somewhere, other pros would always come to me and say, man, you guys are such a tight-knit group in Washington. Like, you guys support each other so well. We don't do that where I'm from. So we will always get that. And I would always take that back to the younger group. Like, man, make sure that you guys support each other, especially when you're in the public.
So as you're playing at Garfield, and you're on some great teams and state championship teams and just superb basketball program there, and you're getting looks to play college ball, I want to bring in a guy who can be overlooked sometimes in the basketball history of this town. And I liked him. I loved and love Lorenzo Romar, and I'm still very good friends with him. And I loved and I'm still very good friends with Bob Bender, who I think recruited you. And, Bob can be forgotten a little bit because Lorenzo came in and immediately had some great success. But Bob, I thought, laid the first foundation of reconnecting Seattle to the UW program. Is that fair to say, do you think? You were one of the guys who stayed home.
I think so. If you look at my freshman class was, and this is Coach Bender and Coach Byron Boudreaux. It was me, Earl Knight, Anthony Washington, Mike Jensen, and there was one more guy we had, I believe. 4 or 5 of us was from home.
All Seattle guys.
All Washington guys. Yep.
Yeah.
So Coach Bender did a really good job of trying to mend the fence around the state, and he just wasn't able to see it going to fruition. But Coach Romar did a good job of coming in and kind of picking up the same plan And he was able to get Brandon and Trey Simmons from junior college, and then Nate Robinson was I believe he was a senior, so he was able to get Nate. I remember when Coach Rowe got here, I was like, Coach, you got to go get these kids. You got to go get boom, boom, boom. You have to. I'm like, Coach, you have to. So he went to see those guys, and luckily he liked them, and the rest is history.
You bring up Nate Robinson's name. Is he the most unique athlete you were ever around? You would look at Nate, and even in his prime, you wouldn't necessarily think, wait a minute, this guy starts in college football and in college basketball and a major program. I don't think you'd necessarily see that. Talk about Nate and what makes him such a special guy.
His name is exactly what he is, Nate the Great. He was, battling with him on a day-to-day basis at practice. You kind of get like you said, you kind of get competitive, but you get frustrated because anything physical, you're not winning. You're not beating him in anything physical. No matter what it was, he was super competitive. But then, sometimes you get used to seeing it, and then he'll go off and do it in a Pac-12 championship game, and the world got to see it. And then everybody's like, man, this dude's amazing. But we saw it every day. And sometimes we got used to it, but he beat you at everything. If you wanted to run down and back, he beat you at that. If you wanted to run a mile, and the mile time was 5, I remember I broke the team record. We had to make the mile in 5:30. I made the mile in like 5:13. And I was like, I got the record. And then the next time we ran it, Nate beat me just to beat my time. Like, he didn't even care about it. He just wanted to beat my time. He got like 5:10. So like, this guy was he was competitive, and he made games easy for me.
Just because of that competitive fire and his willingness to step in against anybody?
Practice was hard. He would ask coach to play he was a starter. He would ask coach to play on the non-starting team every day at practice. Let me play with the gold team. Let me go at the purple team.
To back up that story, you may have heard this. I've told this story before, but it's one of my favorites. There was an article about him, I want to say in Sports Illustrated years ago, and I think he's playing for the Knicks at the time. And it's an off day, and he's playing one of his teammates in a video game. And they're each at their own house. So you talk about competitive. Nate starts to lose, and it becomes obvious he's going to lose this particular video game. He pauses the game. So the other guy's like, man, whatever, and goes out of the screen. The guy lived like 10 minutes away. Nate gets in his car, drives over to the guy's house, and unplugs his computer so his computer will crash, so he can't beat. I mean, do you have any trouble believing that story's true?
Oh, no, that story's 100% true. That's probably one of the smaller things that he's done to win. Like, there's nothing that he won't do to be number one, to beat you. Nothing. He will not stop at anything to beat you. And don't start playing with him. If you start playing with him, it's over.
Well, and again, and that's one thing to be competitive, and then you add the physical talent too. Yes. He was, like I said, as unique a guy as I ever saw, and all along, I'll go ahead and admit it. Every step of the way, I doubted him. Not that matters, but I'm like, all right, he's a great high school player. Let's see what he does at D1. All right, he's a spectacular D1 player. I don't know, man. The NBA is a whole different world, and he just kept proving people like me wrong.
It fueled him. He would get fueled off of that. No matter what arena we went in, if anyone doubted him, it was like you were pumping spinach into Popeye.
That's perfect. You so you play on a UW team, things start to rattle and roll and get good. And I remember I think it's your senior year. Mm-hmm. You guys are struggling a bit. You go down to Oregon and you lose. And I remember thinking, oh boy, it didn't
that was work. Junior year.
That junior year? And you got you rip off 5 in a row right after that. And you get rolling. And you obviously you remember it well. And there's nothing like that when a team gets going like that and it starts clicking and it starts working. I think it was Lorenzo's 3rd year. Mm-hmm. And so you talk about that year a little bit and how things worked out for you.
Well, I remember we had a little bit of preseason hype because we returned everybody. And the year started off, I think we started off the year 0-5 or 0-6. We lost to Gonzaga here at home. And then we go on the road to Wyoming and we get killed at Wyoming, which for multiple reasons, you can't breathe up there. I think everybody to a man was like, Coach, sub me out. Like, we don't even want to be here. So we come back and we started the season off crappy. And everybody just kind of like looked in the mirror like, man, we're not going down like this. And we were close a couple games we were close. We went to NC State. Game was close, but we lose. And then we go to Oregon. They beat us, and then we play Oregon State. And Nate hits the shot to go to overtime.
Right.
And then Trey scores like maybe 8 in overtime, and Trey Simmons, and we win the game. And then from then on, and Oregon State was a pretty solid team, and they were really hard. It was really hard to win in that gym. And from then on, our confidence just started rolling, and we believed that we could beat anybody, on any floor.
And that's the year you guys play UAB in the NCAA tournament, right? In one of the greatest NCAA tournament games I ever saw. They beat you 102-100.
Yep, and here's something about that no one ever talks about, and I'll let a little secret out the bag, is we had a little bit of a team disciplinarian act in that game. So me and I believe it was Bobby Jones. Me and Bobby Jones, we didn't get to start in that game. If you go back and you look, we didn't get to start in that game.
Right.
And I won't go into details on why, but as a coach, I can sit here and tell you that I understand the reason why Coach Romar did it. And it was actually a great decision when you're talking about building a culture.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't start the first, I think we didn't play the first 7 or 8 minutes of the game. And if you go back and you watch that game, they were leading the country in steals. And obviously I played point guard. And they may have stole the ball our first 3 or 4 possessions. They stole the ball from us. So by the time we got put in the game, me and Bobby was like foaming at the mouth to get the game. And he put us in, and we got that thing back rolling. And I remember like it was yesterday, we're down. And this is why I decided to become way more of a pass-first guard. So late in the game, I ended up having a good game. I think I had like 16 or 18 that game. I'm driving to the basket, and Trey Simmons, and we all know, is a great shooter. He's wide open on the left wing. And I decided to lay the ball up, and I got a charge. And I remember that whole summer, Coach Romar would bring me into the office periodically, and he'd show me that clip like, can't miss that pass. You can't miss that pass.
Oh, wow.
That's got to be passed every time. And I was like, he was like, you want to be an NBA player? You got to make this pass. And that my next year, I made sure I didn't miss any of those passes. So that's kind of the backstory to that. But I that was a really good decision as a coach. You looking back, the culture of our team and our program was more important than that one win. And that says a lot, because a lot of people won't do that and sacrifice that type of game. But Coach Rowe was a man of principle, and he made sure, and those are like things that you can keep with you as a young man moving forward to the rest of your life. Like, having that type of principle and discipline, no matter what it is, to live by your values.
You want to fess up to what you did, or is that still something you keep to yourself?
Wasn't me.
Wasn't you?
But I was the captain of the team, so I could have stopped it.
Aha.
So I was an accessory.
And
I take it though.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I bet at the time you weren't quite as willing to accept that, but it is funny how things like that happen in life, as you look back, you go, look, I didn't live him. He had no choice.
Yeah.
That's what he had to do.
Yeah. No, he did what he had to do. He did something, and he proved to the team that doing the right things all the time was more important than just winning a basketball game. And
right.
that kind of stuff is what you want to teach your kids. And that's where you want to send your kids to go to school with someone who has those type of values.
So your junior year, your senior year, where you guys beat Stanford when they were number 1?
Junior.
That's junior. Is that same year there? And I mean, that's maybe, I don't know if it's your favorite game. It's one of the great games in UW history. Yeah. And I mean, the crowd was electric. Everybody remembers Nate's jam, the kind of the reverse jam that he did. Yeah. Just an amazing memory, I'm sure.
You know what was crazy about that game is we played Stanford hit a game-winning shot on Thursday to beat Washington State. So our game ended early. We're all in the locker room watching that game as a team. we're screaming at the TV, wanting Stanford to win the game. Like
sure.
we're like, please don't lose that game because we're gonna beat you guys on Sunday. Because I didn't play Sunday on ABC. Like we're gonna beat you guys. We were so confident that we were gonna win that game. Bobby Jones had his camcorder, had one of the managers holding his camcorder behind the bench. So the last like 2 minutes of the game, his camcorder he's recording.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, and again, that's a team that was kind of on the edge of the whole season slipping away. And you come back, you beat number 1 Stanford, and then you get in a great NCAA game. The next year then is you guys get a number 1 seed in the tournament, right? And you go to Albuquerque.
Absolutely. Well, that year, Stanford ended up beating us in the Pac-12 championship game. So they got their revenge.
Right.
And, the next year, we made sure we took care of the Pac-12 tournament. We ended up getting that done. We beat Arizona. And then we played Pacific in Idaho, and then we played. We
played Montana, and then you Pacific, and then you played Louisville.
And then we played Louisville and Albuquerque, and that was. I've never watched that game, man, until this year.
No kidding.
I finally found enough wits to watch that game. I couldn't even tell you what happened in that game if you'd asked me that maybe 5 months ago. When I watched it, I didn't realize we jumped out to a 10-point lead.
Yeah, early.
I did not realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you guys surprised to be a number 1 seed? I remember it was kind of shocking to everyone. You guys as a team, were you a little surprised when that number 1 pops up and it's you?
We really was. We didn't really understand like the significance of it. And I remember Coach had called us to all come be at the gym like an hour before the ceremony took place. And he was starting to say, man, I think we can get a number 2 or number 1 seed. And we was like, well, what's the importance of that? You know, we were just so like green. We just wanted to play basketball. And he was like, man, it can lead you to the best route to get to the Final Four. Because our whole mindset was it didn't matter who we played. We thought we were the best team in the country. Yeah. So we really wanted to play Illinois because we thought they said Illinois had a better backcourt than us, and they had Deron Williams and D. Brown. And then Carolina was leading the nation in scoring, and we were second. So we wanted to line up with Carolina that had Ray Felton and Marvin Williams was there. And he left us. So we wanted to play those guys. So it didn't really matter. But then we ran against that buzzsaw in Louisville and Coach Pitino. And I mean, he did a really good job. I mean, the thing that he jacked us up with is the whole week of practice. We worked on man-to-man, hard defense. They were going to, get up and deny us. They were going to press us all game. He started the game in a zone.
And
he basically conceded that your guards are better than our guards.
Yeah.
We're gonna get back on defense and we're gonna keep you guys in front of us.
Huh. Great coach then, coming up with a little wrinkle right at the end.
He really did. And that showed you his coaching prowess. He's a good coach.
So you move on from UW and you have about a 7 or 8 year professional career. You squeezed every drop you could get from that career. I know you had a leg injury, and I imagine you occasionally what if it a little bit, like, man, if I'd been a little better, maybe I'd have more time in the NBA. But you played in Europe. You got an awful lot out of it. And something interesting happened near the end of your career. You're with Minnesota, and they're getting ready to release you. And all of a sudden now you're going to be a scout for Minnesota. And this begins you on the path to where you are today. Take me through that. Was that somebody's idea with the organization? Was it yours? Who opened the door to you to say, hey, here's a front office thing that you might consider because your playing days are almost over?
So our general manager was the general manager in Minnesota was my general manager with Albuquerque Thunderbirds.
Oh, no kidding.
So me and him, David Kahn, we would always talk basketball, and he would always say, dude, you have such a great basketball mind. You're gonna make way more money after your basketball career than you ever will playing. He would always tell me that. Wow. So when I was getting ready to finish, and he called me in to release me, he was like, this, you're not gonna be happy what's getting ready to happen, but we have to release you because we need to sign another forward. Because ironically, Brandon Roy, who was on the team, he wasn't healthy enough to play because his knee was bothering him. So when Brandon couldn't stay healthy, we needed to get another forward. So we signed Josh Howard. And And we released the guard, which was me, to sign a forward, which was Josh Howard. So he was like, but I'm going to offer you, he said, I would tell you to go play, but if you don't want to go play and you're ready to get in this side, I'll offer you a scouting job right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you hesitate at all, or did you just kind of see it for the opportunity it might be?
At that point, I called my agent. I had already played in Europe 3 or 4 years. I was always goal oriented, and I tell people this all the time. Like, a lot of people play sports and they're money oriented, like what the sport can get them financially. I never played for that reason. I was just telling my son this the other day. He asked me, what did I love about, the game of basketball? And I said, what drove me in basketball is I wanted to play at the highest level. I wanted to look back and say, I made it to the highest level that you can make it to playing basketball. And I did that. And most people play because of what it gives you. And I never played that way. So when I felt that I got that, if I probably would have changed my mindset and be like, I wanted to be an all-star or a 15-year NBA guy, my goals probably would have been different. I probably would have made different steps strategically. But my goal was like making it to the pros. I should have been like making it in the pros.
Right.
So I was kind of, I won't say content. I was just kind of like tired of fighting the fight.
Right.
And I was like 31, and I just had a son. So I was like, yeah, I'm kind of over it. And I called Coach Romar actually, and I was like, Coach, here's the deal. And he was like, I was like, man, I'm kind of done with it. I had kind of been coming home every summer and training all the pros. While I was 30 and 29,
wow,
I was training Zach Levine's, Brandon's, Jamal. They were coming. I was seeing all the high school kids. I had this time blocked out at the community center, and I would just train those guys for free. Spencer Halls, they just come in and I work them out. And then I started to love that more than I loved working out myself.
Right.
so then the love started then. And when I was like 28, and I would call Coach, and he was like, keep playing, play as long as you can. And then when I called him and told him I had this job offer, he was like, what do you think? And I was like, I think this is a great way to transition into what I want to do after basketball. And he was like, we'll do it. And that's what came about.
Good advice and good decision there. We're going to talk about basketball in the city of Seattle and historically and what it's meant. But before our break, though, I want to point out to you that I rearranged my room today, made one small adjustment in honor of your great run at UW. So you see the Sonics sign behind me. There's 2 bobbleheads. One of them is Gary Payton. It was a talking bobblehead, but the battery eventually died. Not a surprise. The other one is usually Kevin Calabro. I moved Bob Rondo's bobblehead into that in honor of you, the voice of the Huskies, who called all your games. So there you go. That's my tribute to you today.
Great Rondo, the great Rondo.
Will Conroy is our guest, and we've got more coming up on Iconic Sonics. Iconic Sonics is brought to you in part by Simply Seattle, the biggest Sonics apparel store in the world, but also a great Seattle sports apparel store. And in honor of our guest, Will Conroy, I'll mention they've got terrific Husky clothing at Simply Seattle as well. You can use Iconic15 as the code at checkout to save a little money. Go to simplyseattle.com. And Iconic Sonics is brought to you by the legendary Edgewater Hotel, Seattle's only overwater hotel with unobstructed, beautiful views of the Puget Sound and the Olympic Mountains. The Edgewater, the official hotel of Sonics fans everywhere. Welcome back to Iconic Sonics. I'm Mike Gastineau. Will Conroy is our guest. We spent a lot of time, Will, talking about your career. We touched a little bit on the city of Seattle. And you mentioned a name, because to me, this is where it kind of starts when we talk about basketball players, particularly of your generation. There's a guy named Doug Christie, and people remember him, but maybe they don't think about, he was kind of the first guy before all of you. There were other guys before Doug. Well, I mean, there's James Edwards, there's guys from the 70s and the 80s, Steve Hawes. Mm-hmm. But for your generation, the first guy you guys could look up to and say, wow, here's a guy who's at the community center occasionally, or I saw him in a restaurant, or where I know, Doug Christie, his influence on you guys, he was the first, right? In terms of the big guys Correct. You started looking up to.
Correct. So Doug had I remember being a freshman in high school. Doug, in the summer times, his agent, J.R. Harris, they would hold open runs in this gym, this Boys and Girls Club gym in Federal Way. And I wasn't good enough to play in those runs. Obviously, it was all was all the guys who were playing in Europe and, the top high school. They invited Jamal Crawford to play though. So I would ride over there with him and just be in the gym and get a chance to watch. And it was like, dang, he's so skilled and he's tall and he do everything great. And so he was the first one that we can kind of like reach out and touch and be like, you actually can do it. And then, then the next guy was, kind of in our circle was, Jason Terry made it, but then Jamal made it. And then when Jamal made it, somebody I was like, was my best friend, like a brother. When he made it, it was like, okay, I'm making it.
We talked about Bob Bender earlier. I know Bob would tell you that, man, he worked and worked and worked on Jason specifically, but also Jamal to try and get him to stay. Jason goes to Arizona. Jamal goes to Michigan. They end up having great careers. No regrets there. It's interesting to ponder what it might have been like if they had stayed home. But little by little, Seattle is becoming a hotbed at this point. As you mentioned earlier, you've got Nate Robinson, Brandon Roy, Spencer Hawes, Aaron Brooks, Will Conroy, all of these guys starting to come of age and get attention. What impact, you talked about, Gary Payton's impact for you. What about the Sonics in general? What about hanging with your buddies and watching the games or going to games at the arena, seeing them ever? You talk a little bit about the culture of the Sonics and how much it was important to the Seattle basketball at the time. Kids, you guys were kids playing the game. What did it mean to you to have this great team here?
It was very important. I remember getting the chance to go to games and, just like the fact to know Allen Iverson was in your city or Jordan was in your city or Kobe was in your city. And you get to go down there and, go to the Key Arena and watch a game and just the impact of them being in our city. Like we didn't know what it felt like to not have an NBA team. So those guys just having that impact, being visual, being able to watch a game. Gary Payton used to come to our high school games. Like you would see him up there. He's like, man, Gary Payton's here. Vin Baker's here. Like things like that. Sean Kemp was here. Like things like that. You can't take that for granted. And I think, when you don't have a team, you realize how fortunate you were. Their impact on me specifically was big time because, I love the way Gary Payton played. I love the pizzazz that he played with. I love the confidence that he played with. I love the swagger that he played with. It wasn't like he was out there doing the most flashiest stuff, but he believed in himself. He played defense, and he kind of gave our city an identity. And that's kind of what I took from that.
Well, and you talked about it, that the Sonics players and coaches were in the community in terms of basketball. I remember a UW game, maybe 97 or so before you're there, and I forget who they're playing. And I looked up, and his physique was unmistakable. I look up, and standing in one of the little hallways right outside is George Karl. And I'm thinking, the Sonics have a game tonight. What is he doing? And I went over, what are you doing? He said, he loved basketball. But it was also community oriented too, right? It gets back to what we talked about. Everybody in Seattle wanted everybody in Seattle to be good.
Yes, correct. You're absolutely right. Like you said, just the fact that knowing those guys were here. And when I was here, Coach Casey, Dwayne Casey, used to bring the Sonics here to play with us in the summertime.
Wow.
He used to bring Rashard Lewis, I think Ansu Cisse,
yeah.
Ansu Cisse, like that group of guys that would stick around all summer, not the superstars, but the group of guys that would stick around all summer and get that summer work. They'd come play with us every day.
Yeah.
Every day. And Coach Casey would be right out there. And I remember talking to Coach Casey. And if you ever got a chance to get him on, I remember talking to Coach Casey. And he said, and this kind of like really like, oh, I'm making it. He said, you got a chance to be an NBA guard. You're big, you're strong, you play defense. And he was watching our pickup runs. And I was like, the NBA coach is telling me this? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, what that impact, it's got to be, because it's one thing if your buddies are telling you or your parents or your uncle or somebody, it's like you're couching that a little bit like, well, come on there. But when it's this guy kind of out, it's a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely different. And I remember they traded for Ray Allen, and Ray Allen came and played with us. He was coming off the golf course, and he played pickup with us with a button-up shirt on, a golf shirt. But boy, he did not miss a shot. And you know what? It was a chance. It was a chance to see how far from a NBA player you were. You like, man, these dudes are great. They don't miss open shots. Their preparation, they come to the gym and stretch. There's not a lot of extras on what they're doing. They get right to the point. And, just being able to see that live and in flesh, it helps you. It'll help me.
There's a lot of great stories about Jamal Crawford, and I think he's, I don't know, we call him the king, whatever you want to call him. He's the guy around whom a lot of stuff revolves now in terms of the basketball community. Never forgot where he was from, gives so much back, and encourages all of the players to give back to the younger kids. One of my favorite stories about him was that in the 90s, he got a job working concessions at Key Arena. I remember thinking he had to be the worst concessions guy ever because he had to always be sneaking out to watch the game, right? He's not selling popcorn. He's trying to watch hoops.
The crazy part about that is he was living with me at the time.
So, oh, no kidding.
Yeah, he stayed with me. He stayed with me and my mom. So him and my brother worked together down there. And you know what? Jamal is such he's a different type of guy, man. Like he's not a flashy guy. Mm-hmm. He's just a neighborhood guy. He doesn't want to, he wants to fit right in with everybody else. He doesn't want to stand out. He wants to help everybody. He has a great heart. And every kid that, wants to reach out and ask for advice, he makes himself available. Like it's very rare for a guy to accomplish as much as that he's accomplished, to be such a normal guy. He's just a normal guy. Doesn't want to be treated any different.
He talked about, and I think it was Doug Christie, he told me, who was very generous with Jamal when Jamal was a young kid and needed generosity both in basketball and just the shoes and gear and stuff. And that's what triggered with him as he started achieving some things, the idea of making sure he gave back. And again, a lot of you guys have done this. And maybe talk about that a little bit. I mean, some of it's obvious. You want to help young people. It's inside all of us to want to help somebody who's young and maybe needs a pointer or two. But the Seattle basketball community, I always say it's like a bunch of guys on a nice boat, and they got their hands out reaching to the young kids right behind the boat saying, come on, young fella, I'll pull you up in here. You're coming with us. It's unending, and it goes back generations of guys helping guys. Where's that spirit come from?
I think Jamal is definitely at the top of the pyramid when it comes to that. And me, him, and Brandon, we formed a group of guys. We call ourselves the home team, and that was kind of our motto: is just be really tight and really help out the guys that come underneath us, and always be available. Take kids to the gym, work them out, let us see us work out. Obviously, when you've accomplished as much as Jamal and Brandon, and those guys are always coming back and at the Rotary Vista Boys and Girls Club, or in the community, it's not fake. Like I said earlier, it's not fake. These guys won't say no. Like, I've never seen Jamal tell a kid no for an autograph. I've seen him give random kids that stay in the gym late rides home. Like, you need a ride home? I'm gonna give you a ride home because you want to be great in basketball, so you decide to stay in the gym a little later.
Right.
It's like, can you imagine? I couldn't imagine getting dropped off at home and saying, "Hey, Mom, Rashard Lewis just dropped me off." You know what I'm saying? It's like right. Put that in context. It's crazy.
Well, and you mentioned something else too. That's another thing. I always referred to people. I said Seattle is I would call Seattle a basketball village, and what I mean by that is the old line of "it takes a village to raise a child." You guys helped each other family-wise. You mentioned Jamal staying with you for a while. That was not unique. There were other guys who would, hey, this guy's staying at this guy's house now, and who cares the reason why? Maybe who knows what it was. It doesn't matter. The point being, there was always some place and someone that you could turn to for a little extra help. And and again, maybe that's because of the geography of it. So many of you guys were all from about a 2-mile square area down in the Central District in the Rainier Valley.
It is, but also, you hear someone's story, because this city is so small, you can hear someone's story and you can be like, I heard that this kid is, he doesn't have the resources to do this, and this. So as an older player or as somebody who does have the resources, you try to reach back and help them. I remember Terrence Williams and Marcus Williams, they lived together, and those both were the top forwards in the state. And I remember, when I left here, I was calling back like, Coach Rowe, you got to get both of them. You got to take both with Terrence and Marcus. And obviously Marcus ended up going to Arizona, and Terrence goes to Louisville. But you hear those stories all the time of, I may get a call that when I was playing that this guy needed some help and he needs a place to stay, and his housing situation wasn't stable. And us as a community, we got to find a way to help this guy. And that's just kind of like, we're always going to be that way. DeJounte Murray is that type of kid, so he's going to do that now that he's made it. Banchero is going to be the same way. Jalen Noel the same way. Jaden McDaniels. I mean, we're not going to. Our motto is to not let the next guy. What we say is send the elevator back down. That's what we say. That's the terminology we say. Always send the elevator back down.
You just ran off some names there, and I've got a list here. There's like 11 or 12 guys in the league right now from Seattle. There was a little bit of a time where there weren't a lot of guys from the league, and I think it's just going to ebb and flow. But Banchero, Murray, Noel, Peyton II, who was born here and came from this area, Kevin Porter Jr., Levine, McDaniels, on and on. I mean, it's incredible. Hey, back to Jamal, what has the crossover meant to this city and to the basketball community? Your job over at UW requires you to go out and recruit young men. I imagine they've heard of this, and not that that's necessarily going to tip them and say, "Oh, I'm going to come to UW because I heard about the crossover." But especially in the absence of the Sonics, this thing's been really important. Can you discuss that a little bit?
It is definitely an advantage. Even as a coach, it's an advantage. Kids all across the country know about the crossover. I mean, their highlights have made ESPN on every single basketball social media engine are the crossover highlights. And I think Jamal does a really good job of one, giving our guys a platform to play, local kids, because there's even kids that aren't talked about that played in the crossover who's gotten European jobs just off of playing in the crossover. But, Jamal, he's identified a lot of superstars, and they want to come and play, and he opens the doors for free to let our kids come and watch that. And Seattle Pacific University has done an unbelievable job of granting him full access to the gym in the summer times. And I know that's got to be tough, just knowing the schedule of college athletics and gym usage. And they do it. And it's been great. Our kids have grown up watching it. I've seen little pictures of like 11-year-old Kevin Porter or 12-year-old Kevin Porter at the crossover when he was a child, and now he's in the NBA playing at the crossover. So it's crazy to watch like the maturation of it, and it's getting bigger and better. And hopefully, Jamal's doing a good job of like filling the gap of our guys being able to see NBA players in the summertime.
The interesting thing last year when LeBron came up here, and it all kind of got away from everybody. People kind of forget, man, LeBron's a different cat, man. You get him in, and there's going to be a lot of people wanting to see that. And I remember, and I don't know if anything came of this, I kind of hope it did. I remember Tim Lewicki, who is with OVG and helped get the arena done, helped. He was a huge factor in getting that arena built downtown. Reached out to Jamal just kind of friendly through social media and said, hey, maybe next year if LeBron comes up, we play that game over here. I don't know if anything came of that. And I'm sure part of what Jamal wants to do is keep it at SPU because they've been great. But it would be something if there was a game or a matchup that ended up in the big building next year.
Knowing Jamal, he's probably got something planned. He's probably got something planned down the line. But, what happened was, he gets the gym and we knew it would be packed. We knew it would be like that, but we didn't factor in that the floor would sweat as much as it did.
Yeah, right.
And it became a health hazard. And he actually called me. It was like, man, there's so many people out here that can't get in. He was more mad about kids not being able to get in than he was about anything. He was so upset that there was maybe thousands of kids outside who came from wherever they come from that just wanted to come watch the game, and Jamal wanted every single kid to be able to get in and see that. And that's kind of what broke his heart. So he had called me a little bit. It was like, you think you could open up UW? And I was like, not today, without insurance and all that stuff. Like, right. It can't happen today, buddy.
Like, we're not 15 anymore, Jamal.
we can't staff that. No way. But hopefully the next time, I know next year he's already gotten pledges from half a dozen guys in the league that seen it, like they want to come. The John Morant's of the world and all those guys said they want to come up and play. So I'm sure he'd have something planned.
It says something about this community, doesn't it? That 15 years after the Sonics leave, and granted, LeBron James is somebody, he almost transcends the NBA, but nevertheless, every kid in this town was telling mom and dad, LeBron's coming. I want to go. That even without the NBA coming through all the time, that there's still, and again, that gets back to you guys. It gets back to this whole thing that we're talking about, the community, the fact that you guys are accessible. You're out. You're going to a Kraken game on Martin Luther King Day and helping honor a group of kids who have done the right thing. Absolutely. On and on, the connectivity between the basketball community without the top tier of the NBA, it's just remarkable, Will. It really, it's so unique.
I appreciate that. And, just hearing you say it, like when we started this thing, like maybe when I was 18. So when we started this thing over 20 something years ago, this was kind of the goal, without kind of saying we wanted to be notarized for it. It was just kind of like our goal. Like we want to be able to have a really tight knit group, and we want to help every single kid achieve their goals. And, now people was like, well, it's so easy to make it to the pros now. It's much easier than when you guys made it. And like, we don't get mad about that. We're happy about that. We're like, perfect. We put guardrails up. It's like when you're bowling, we put guardrails up for the people that can't bowl so they can still get a strike.
and you tell a young kid, oh yeah, it's easy. Go out and do it. Then tell me how easy it is to get to the NBA.
Well, we're going to help you. If you allow us to help you, we're going to show you how it can be done. And if you allow us to help you, we're going to show you the path of. It is much. I won't say it's much easier, but it is a little bit easier now, just because there's people that have made it that you can go talk to and say, look, if you go that way, that's not going to help you. If you go this way, that's probably the fastest route to where you're trying to go to. And people that's reputable.
Right. Hey, the next generation's coming, and I don't have to tell you, you got one out in the front yard or front driveway shooting hoops. Your son Will, he's gotten some notoriety. As a dad and as a coach, is it two different things there for you right now with him, Trace? He's 12 and he seems to have the ability and the skills that maybe the game is going to come to him in a bigger way.
You know what? As a dad, just by you saying the dad in me, when you said that, lit me up, made me grin, and makes me feel like there's no better feeling to watch than watching your son have success, watching your kids have success. No better. You can make as millions of dollars playing sports or reach the top level. You can watch it with LeBron right now with his son. When he goes and watch his son plays, he has the most fun. It's the best feeling in the world. The coach of me, the coach of my son, I see it a little different. So now I'm like, okay, he got to get better at this, and this, or we're not good enough at this. And, that's just me kind of nitpicking, like, well, there's ways to go. But the dad in me, I'm very proud of him. He gets a lot of social media attention for whatever reason. The cameras happen to like him. But as a dad, I have to protect him from that. So I don't let him start social media. He hasn't gotten any of that stuff. So I have to protect him for that and keep his head and his nose down and just keep grinding and being a kid. And I don't want nobody to take that from him right now. Just be a kid and just have fun and be one of the guys. And then my job as a parent is to, and as the coach of him, if he tells me this is what he wants to be great at, then like I said, I'm going to show him how to work to do it.
We don't know where life's going to take us, but there could come a day where you might be in a position to coach him collegiately. Is that something you'd want, or would you want to back away? Have you thought about that yet? You've got time still to make that decision. How would that come down yet, do you think?
Well, no, he's all Husky. He's all Husky. He's been all Husky his whole life. But then the other day, I think the news channel did an interview with him, and this is unsolicited. I'm just sitting in the back listening while they got the camera on him. And he says, Yeah. I want to play for my dad if he's still here.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you're getting too old now to be saying you like. He's been Husky his whole life, but now it's like, Dad, if you're not a Husky, then I'm not. I'm gonna go to Carolina. I'm like, no, dude.
Yeah. Well, hang on. Unless I get carried away, because I'm an Indiana guy. I can get Mike Woodson to call. I can have Woody call you right now, and we'll get him on that path. So don't give up on that idea yet.
Yeah, Coach Woodson's a good coach too, and my guy Yasir is there too. He's the associate head coach. They're doing a good job over there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Will, I appreciate your time. I want to wrap it up with 5 quick questions about guys we've talked about. And just off the top of your head, don't put a lot of thought into this. Just come up with a good answer for us. 5 quick questions among the Seattle guys, the Seattle ball players we talked about. Who's the best defender among the Seattle? You can't answer yourself for any of these.
The best defender amongst all the Seattle guys that's played the game, I would probably throw. When he was engaged, I would probably say Tony Roten Jr.
Tony Roten Jr. would even mention him. And again, plenty of guys who played and for whatever reason, things didn't work out at the pro level. Who's the best shooter? Who do you want with the ball in the final seconds to knock down a shot?
Shooter or game time scorer?
Okay, good. Let's go game time scorer. I like that. A clutch situation, you need a hoop to keep the game going.
Jamal.
That's not a bad call.
There's no fear of taking that shot.
I got a feeling, maybe I'll be wrong on this, but I wanted to put this in to see if I get the answer. I was thinking, who had the biggest mouth? Who was talking the most?
Who talked the most crap? And I can't say me.
We'll put you in as an honorary guest there.
Yeah, I'd probably jump up. Oh, Nate Robinson. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Nate Robinson.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking it had to be Nate.
My fault. Nate the Great. I had to think about that. Nate the Great.
Who's the nicest guy? You got a 5-hour cross-country flight. You're sitting next to somebody. Who you want that to be? The nicest ball player. Good conversationalist. Nice guy.
Ooh, Brandon.
Yeah.
Brandon. But he also could be mean on the court, though. But he's a great conversation off the court.
And Brandon got 326 games in the NBA, and we talked about what ifs earlier. This is a guy whose numbers and whose career unfortunately derailed by injury. Okay, then who's the best? Who's the best guy? Just your opinion. Just who's the best guy to come out of Seattle in say your lifetime?
And that is a controversial question, but I test. I always say Brandon 1A, Jamal 1B.
Yeah.
But this is what I told both of them on our group text. Paulo Banchero's on you guys' tail.
Yeah. I was going to ask among the new guys, and we have mentioned DeJounte Murray, who's had a great run so far in his mid-career and on and on. It just has always been incredible to me and kind of stunning how much great talent has come out of this area, and not the least of which was Will Conroy.
And the most decorated is Jason Terry.
Most decorated. Okay, so a 6th question. Most decorated guy, Jason the Jet. Yep. Boy, he was something.
Yes, he was.
He was something. Will, it's great catching up with you. I'm anxious to see you. And I know Jamal's got a young son who's starting to get some attention as well. You never know how it's all going to play out, but it'll be fun to watch the next generation. The next generation is happening because of you guys.
Thank you.
And not just being dads, but by, let's get the gym open. Let's make sure everybody's coming up here and playing. Hey, kid's off track. Let's get him back on track. And that's been the way it's done in Seattle the whole time I've been here since 91. And it's to credit to guys like you, man. Congratulations.
I appreciate you. And I appreciate you for having me on and all the support over all the years that you've had for me. Will, thanks very much. Best to you, and thanks for doing it. Thank you, Gasp. That's it for another great episode of Iconic Sonics. Thanks to our guest, Will Conroy. Thanks to you for listening. Thanks to all of our great sponsors for making Iconic Sonics possible. We've got several other shows planned and several other shows we've done, and you can get information on all of that at truthplusmedia.com. I'm Mike Gastineau. We'll see you next time on Iconic Sonics.